I just felt physically I can whip any guy on the field.
Kenny Saber, a man in motion to the left. Saber looking. Saber throws. Keep your heads up. Act like a champion.
You come to Ann Arbor on a fall afternoon, and you go into the stadium and you see a lot of enthusiasm. The bands, the color, the natural rivalries. I think that's the thing that professional sports could never touch.
Even playing in 4 Super Bowls, the nervousness wasn't. Army was it was the name of the game, to beat Army. Time running, inability to move the ball. I came to the conclusion that we had to get something big and get it in a hurry. And when Peschel goes up for the ball, there were 6 hands up there. 4 of those hands belonged to Arkansas, 2 of them belonged to Texas.
You can't buy tradition. You earn it. And that is why college football is so great. College football will be here no matter what happens. Even if the world ends, somehow college football will be played the next year.
College football. Each afternoon, thousands of fans and alumni across the country turn out to support their favorite team. It's tradition. It's exciting. It's powerful. Pro football has its Sundays, basketball its winter indoors, baseball its summer, but college football has indisputably claimed that first day of each autumn weekend. The very first intercollegiate football game was played November 6, 1869, between Princeton and Rutgers. The rules were simple then, 25 men per side, and the first team to score 6 goals won the game. Rutgers came out on top that day, 6-4. But the early game of football was a rough and tumble affair as the sport became brutal and dangerous. In 1905, President Teddy Roosevelt threatened to ban football unless some order was put into the game. One of the first to come to the defense of college football was Walter C. Camp, known as the father of the game. Camp gave American football its own uniqueness by creating new rules. Soon formations followed, like the Harvard Flying Wedge, and protective equipment emerged, such as the game's first helmet in 1894. Amos Alonzo Stagg, known as football's grand old man, modernized the sport. In his 56-year coaching career, which began at the University of Chicago in 1892, Stagg was a pioneer in developing many elements of the game, such as the huddle, men in motion, the spiral pass, onside kicks, and reverses. John William Heisman, the man whom after the Heisman Trophy was named, coached at Georgia Tech in the early 1900s. He was a tough coach whose teams were always well prepared. So much so that in 1916, his Yellow Jackets crushed tiny Cumberland College 222-0. Glenn Scobie Warner, known to the football world as Pop, was another one of the great innovators of the game. In his career of nearly half a century, he coached a total of 47 All-Americans, most notably running back Jim Thorpe. Playing for Carlisle, Thorpe's amazing career culminated in his being selected as the greatest football player of the first half of the 20th century. College football finally came of age at the University of Notre Dame when a coach by the name of Knute Rockne took over in 1918. The Rock, as he was known to every football fan, masterminded one of football's greatest dynasties, bringing Notre Dame national championships in 1924, 29, and 30. Best known for his pregame and halftime pep talk, Rockne's gift for inspiring his team was legendary. The most famous of all pep talks involved the immortal player George Gipp and the Army Notre Dame game of 1928.
Rockne talked to his players between halftime, and they were behind by 6 points. And Rockne then told him a story. He said, I should never tell you this, but when George Gipp passed away, the last breath, the last words he mentioned is, Rock, when the going gets tough, ask the boys to win one for the Gipper. And you know what actually happened? They went out there and a player by the name of Jack Chevney broke loose and scored a touchdown, which defeated one of the great Army teams of all time, 13-7.
This was a time when college football enjoyed its greatest popularity, in large part due to the Dean of American Sports Writers, Grantland Rice. Rice's descriptive flair created many a legend.
Outlined against a blue-gray October sky, the four horsemen rode again. In dramatic lore, they're known as famine, pestilence, destruction, and death. These are only aliases. Their real names are Struldrere, Miller, Crowley, and Layden.
Another subject that Grantland Rice immortalized was Illinois running back Red Grange.
A streak of fire, a breath of flame, eluding all who reach and clutch. A gray ghost thrown into the game that rival hands may never touch. A rubber, bounding, blasting soul whose destination is the goal. Red Grange of Illinois.
While the galloping ghost shattered many individual rushing records, teams like Minnesota, Notre Dame, and Army ruled the 1930s and 40s. In addition, college football also produced many outstanding players who would go on to other careers. President Dwight D. Eisenhower played for Army in 1915. Supreme Court Justice Byron Whizzer White was an All-American at Colorado in 1937. President John F. Kennedy played at Choate, while Brother Bobby lettered at Harvard. And yes, let's not forget Michigan's All-American center, President Gerald Ford. As college football evolved, so did coaching. The game reached a new level of sophistication. Offensive coordinators were plotting strategies like chess masters, looking for weak spots, disguising attacks, and shifting formations. Many coaches tried new ideas, but only a few succeeded. In the 1950s, Oklahoma coach Bud Wilkinson perfected the split T formation. His teams once won 47 games in a row before someone figured out how to stop them. In the 60s, Coach Darrell Royal at Texas introduced the wishbone offense. The result, 2 national championships and a lot of defensive coordinators shaking their heads. Coach John McKay at Southern Cal put one of his running backs in the slot and then pitched the ball back to O.J. Simpson. A simple move with dramatic results. In the 70s, the University of Houston perfected the veer option as a potent offensive weapon. The 1980s saw college football turn to the air. One of the most successful passing teams of the decade has been the exciting Brigham Young Cougars.
McMahon all the way back in his own 46, throwing for the end zone. Receivers are there, defenders are there. It is in the end zone. Who has the ball? Touchdown!
For the past 127 years, it has been the most colorful, spirited, and exciting sport in the world. And that is the history of college football. In the early 1900s, Coach Fielding Yost's Michigan teams were simply awesome. Known as Hurry Up Yost, the master of rapid motion on and off the field, his teams lost only one game between 1901 and 1905. One of college football's greatest coaches was Knute Rockne. In Rock's 12 years at Notre Dame, he won 105, lost only 12, and tied 5 for a winning percentage of .881. Such was the genius of Knute Rockne. Following in the Rockne tradition of coaching success at Notre Dame was Frank Lay. His system was simple. You won. In one remarkable streak from 1946 to 49, Lay's team went 39 games without a loss. His final coaching numbers, 107 wins, 13 losses, and 9 ties. Charles Bud Wilkinson became head coach at Oklahoma in 1947. For the next 17 years, Wilkinson's Sooners were unstoppable. 145 wins, 29 losses, 4 ties, and 3 national championships. Between 1948 and 1957, his teams won their conference title every year. The Sooners mastered Wilkinson's split T formation with lightning speed and bone-crushing power. Oklahoma was so dominant, they ran off win streaks of 31 and 47 games, the latter being the longest in college football history. Coach Bud Wilkinson, the Wizard of Norman, Oklahoma, and a strong supporter of one platoon football.
When you had to play both offense and defense, you were trying to make a man an all-around football player. You could never isolate him because he had to play offensive in whatever position he was going to be in, and then he had to turn around and be a defensive linebacker or a defensive tackle or whatever the position might be. But that put a greater emphasis on conditioning. It put a far greater emphasis on the willingness to play when you're tired. If college football would go back to one platoon, I think it would improve the game dramatically.
One of Coach Wilkinson's star players on his 1949 team was All-American Darrell Royal. Royal was influenced by his former coach's style, and it wasn't long before he developed his own coaching style at Texas. He called it the wishbone, a triple option offense that propelled his Longhorns to the top of the college ranks. Royal's bruising wishbone offense left defenses flustered, searching for ways to contain all the options. Coach Royal was a firm believer in the running attack. As for the aerial game, he was quoted as saying, "When you pass, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are bad."
If we'd have had the fullback that had it, we'd have been a walk-in. Where's the glasses? Glasses, Bubba. And next time I just run it away from the split end. Okay.
In over 20 years of coaching, Darrell Royal compiled a record of 184 wins, 60 losses, and 5 ties. In addition, his teams won 2 national championships. For 3 decades at Ohio State, Wayne Woodrow Hayes was the winningest coach in the Big Ten. In fact, in the history of the sport, only 4 coaches have won more games. For Woody Hayes, his coaching career began back in 1946.
We know that we're going to have a tough ball game, but we've played a lot of tough ones this year, and actually we're going out there to play what we hope will be our best ball game. I assure you, Harry, that we're not taking them lightly in any way.
No opponent ever took a Woody Hayes ball club lightly. His philosophy was the power game, 3 yards and a cloud of dust. The result, 1 national championship and 13 Big Ten titles. If Woody Hayes' Ohio State Buckeyes weren't winning the conference title, there was a good bet that Bo Schembechler's Michigan Wolverines were. How dominant were Woody and Bo's teams? Well, from 1968 to 1982, no teams other than Michigan or Ohio State won the Big Ten championship. It is one of the greatest rivalries in college football.
That experience with Woody is certainly one I'll never forget. I played for him. I coached for him for 6 years as an assistant. We competed against each other for a decade. And that competition was heated and it was tough. More than anything else, the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry was a clean rivalry. The games were tough and they were physical, but there were never any extracurricular activities going on out there. There was always a tremendously clean game.
In his first year, Ara Parsegian turned a 1-9 Notre Dame team into a 9-1 ball club and brought back the glory of Rockne and Lay as his Fighting Irish won national championships in 1966 and 73. Just down the road in Pennsylvania, another football dynasty, Penn State, was being developed by head coach Joe Paterno. Paterno's secret to his national championships, motivation.
Come on, Eddie, be tough out there now. Come on, take off now. Let's go, bro. Come on, John, run. What was the last one you hit Capoletti? Was that this lug 3? Lug 2. Yeah, that's a good call. Tell Capoletti he didn't run it right, though.
Paterno's record speaks for itself. 5 undefeated teams and 2 national championships. The winningest coach in college football history with 336 victories is Grambling's Eddie Robinson. Coaching for almost half a century, Robinson is the only living member of the prestigious 300 Club. The man whose record he broke for most victories played on the 1935 Alabama National Championship team. He was a feisty split-end by the name of Paul Bryant. Later, he'd be known simply as the Bear.
There are some lessons to be learned in football that are very difficult to teach at home, in the church, or in the classroom. Yet we know that if you've done a lot of work someday, that if they only learn one thing in football, and that's to sacrifice, well, I think it's worthwhile, because someday they're going to have to sacrifice. Our football is out-quick them, out-hit them, and the little things. The little things.
The words and wisdom of Coach Bryant, the man who became a living legend with Alabama's Crimson Tide.
The number 1 football team in the world. Coach Paul Bryant.
The Bears' popularity in Alabama was so great, there was even talk of his running for governor. But what Coach Bryant loved the most was Alabama football. Bear Bryant started his successful coaching career at Maryland, then Kentucky and Texas A&M. But it was his Alabama teams that brought him national championships, 6 of them. He also coached such high-spirited stars as Joe Namath. In 1964, Namath's passes virtually ended up in the hands of All-American Ray Perkins. Next came quarterback Kenny Stabler.
And what I really think is a release with a, okay, pass it to go on each side. They come back with a release.
Stabler throws. Complete to touchdown.
But the greatness of Paul Bear Bryant wasn't that he coached football, he coached people. And as former player George Blanda once said of the Bear, this must be what God looks like.
Keep your heads up. Act like a champion.
He was a man of his word. It didn't have to be in writing. He gave you his word, that was it. You can take it to the bank, you can rely on it.
He came to our locker room and made a specific point of going over to Tommy Clements, our quarterback, and congratulating him and congratulating the entire team. This was a man with great class.
The Heisman Trophy, the symbol of excellence in college football. Each year it's awarded to the game's best player. In 1940, that best player was old number 98 of the Michigan Wolverines, Tom Harmon. All Harmon did his senior year was break 10 record held by the legendary Red Green. His versatility made him a true triple threat, for Tom Harmon could do it all.
I kicked off, I kicked extra points, I passed, I punted, and played safety on defense and played halfback on offense. So once you got in the game, you were busy. I've had many people say, well, don't you wish you were 30, 40 years younger that you could have played today with the big money and everything. I don't. Those years that we played, both sides, with 60 minutes of football, was a better game.
The Heisman Trophy belonged to the Army in the mid-1940s, as Mr. Inside, Doc Blanchard, won the award in 1945. The next year, it was Mr. Outside, Glenn Davis, who kept the award at West Point. In 1947, Johnny Lujack became Notre Dame's second Heisman winner. Many football historians consider the versatile Lujack as college football's greatest all-around player. SMU's Doak Walker won the award in 1948. A three-time All-American, Walker's brilliant play led the Mustangs to national prominence. Six years later, Alan Amici, a bruising runner from Wisconsin, won the Heisman. Nicknamed the Horse, it usually took two players to bring him down. The Heisman returned to South Bend in 1956 with the Golden Boy, Paul Horney. The amazing fact is that he won the award on a team that won 2 and lost 8. John David Crow brought the trophy to Texas A&M the following year. Crow turned out to be the only Heisman winner ever to play for Coach Bear Bryant. In 1960, it was time for the Naval Academy and Joe Bellino to display the coveted award. 3 years later, another midshipman won the Heisman. His name, Roger Staubach. Never had anyone played the quarterback position quite like Roger the Dodger.
At the time, I really didn't understand the impact of the Heisman. It was a big moment. You know, it was my dad back in Cincinnati, Ohio, just went crazy. He went running up and down the street in our neighborhood. And when I got home before the Cotton Bowl game, they had a big party out in our neighborhood. It was a big moment for him. And I also mentioned to the midshipmen, the guys on the team, I said I'm going to cut it up in 44 pieces and give everybody one. And I was, you know, trying to let my teammates know what they meant to me, and I still get letters asking for one of those pieces.
1967 saw the Heisman move to the West Coast as strong-arm quarterback Gary Beban became UCLA's first winner. The next year, the trophy was transferred across town to USC and Orenthal James Simpson, better known as O.J. Simpson literally ran away with the trophy, recording the largest margin of victory ever in Heisman balloting. But it was in the 1967 game against top-ranked UCLA that O.J. Simpson recorded his greatest performance. At stake was a trip to the Rose Bowl and a national championship. With time running out in the fourth quarter and UCLA leading 20-14, a tired O.J. Simpson almost broke the kickoff.
And we came out of the huddle, and I was standing there, and I heard him go red. Red meant hot, meant it's an audible. The next play is going to be the play 23, which shocked me because, one, I was tired, and two, I didn't think it was a good call for 3rd and 6 or 7. When the ball was snapped, the hole opened up beautifully, and I remember hopping in there to make sure I got the first down. And then it was just a matter of trying to weave my way downfield, and I cut back, and it was a foot race to the end zone. And with Ricky Aldridge's PAT, we won the game 21-20, and it's to me, it's the greatest game I'd ever played in, and it's still, you know, my favorite.
1970, quarterback Jim Plunkett became Stanford's first Heisman winner. In 1972, the Nebraska Cornhuskers featured one of college football's most electrifying players, Johnny Rogers, and he put on moves never seen before on his way to the Heisman. The next year, John Cappelletti became Penn State's first Heisman winner. Introducing Archie Griffin, college football's only two-time Heisman Trophy winner. This brilliant Buckeye running back won the award in 1974 and again in 1975, while leading Ohio State to consecutive Big Ten championships. 1976 was the year of TD, Tony Dorsett. Dorsett shattered the NCAA single-season rushing record with 2,150 yards as he led Pittsburgh to an undefeated season and a national championship. In 1978, the Heisman went to Oklahoma's high-flying Billy Sims. USC held the trophy 2 of the next 3 years, with Charles White winning in 79 and Marcus Allen in 81. But perhaps the most gifted of all Heisman winners was the 1982 recipient, Herschel Walker. Combining awesome power, speed, and agility, Walker epitomized what it meant to be college football's best. Since 1935, 52 Heisman trophies have been presented to the game's greatest players, their names forever enshrined in the history of college football. The spirit of college football. Nothing like it anywhere in the world. You have the fans, the mascots, and the rivalries.
More than anything else, it's a tradition. Ohio State and Michigan have been playing for 8 million years and will always hate each other on that Saturday in November. And Pitt and Penn State have been playing since the last century, and they will hate each other on that Saturday in November. And Cal and Stanford. It doesn't matter that neither team has never won a national title. The fans don't care. They will play that game, and they will sell it out most of the time. And that is why college football is so great.
If you talk about college football rivalries, you have to start off with Ohio State versus Michigan. Sure, there are other great rivalries across the country. But when Ohio State plays Michigan on those Saturdays in late November, nothing else matters to the citizens of these two states. What heightens the importance of these games even more is the fact that they usually determine the Big Ten championship and the right to go to the Rose Bowl. The late Bob Buford, Michigan's legendary sportscaster, recalls a classic game.
And I can honestly say that down through the years, some of the most dramatic, some of the most pulse-pounding games have been these fantastic Michigan-Ohio State classics. Remember 1969? That was the year of the impossible dream. That ball game, Ohio looked just as good as their press clippings. Michigan quickly out of the huddle, trailing 12-7 with the ends in tight in the balance line. And again, Don Moorhead under center. Full house D in the backfield. Handed off to Garvey Craw. In behind Bobby Baumgartner's block up front. In between Stillwagon and Tatum into the Buckeye end zone. Frank Titus made the extra point, and Michigan was leading 14-12. A few minutes later, Michigan forced Ohio State to punt from deep in Buckeye territory. Sends the ball, booted one. I can see it yet. coming down here on the 38-yard line. Little Barry Pearson took it in his arms. He got a block from Tommy Darden at the 40. He picked up another one from Pete Newell at the 50. He ran away from Celine at the 40, the 30, the 25. He went down that mud saw like a penguin with a hot herring in his cummerbund all the way down to 10-5, and he was piggyback ridden into the Ohio State 3-yard line. And then Michigan, leading in the ball game 14-12, quickly broke out of the huddle with the ends in tight in the balance line, the full house D in the backfield. Don Moorhead this time faked to Garvey Croft, kept it himself, moved in behind All-American Danny Deardorff's block up front, slid it into the Buckeye end zone. Frank Titus made the extra point, and Michigan had a commanding 21-12 lead in the second half with less than 30 seconds remaining, when Tommy Darden intercepted Mason Jowski's pass on the Michigan 18-yard line and brought it out to the Wolverine 31-yard line. And Michigan was still ahead 24-12 with 21 seconds remaining. It was a foregone conclusion that Michigan had just perpetrated one of the biggest upsets in the 100-year history of man's inhumanity to man.
There are many great rivalries in college football: Texas, Oklahoma, Pitt, Penn State, Alabama, Auburn. One of the most colorful is between Notre Dame and Southern California. There was the time in 1977 when Irish coach Dan Devine pulled out the lucky green jerseys for his team just before the kickoff. The fired-up Irish came out smoking. Led by quarterback Joe Montana, Notre Dame cruised to a 49-19 win. Back in 1967, another sort of psychological warfare occurred between the Irish and the Trojans.
2 years previous, SC went out on the field, and Notre Dame left them out there 20 minutes before they came out. So by the time Notre Dame came out, SC being out there exposed to those fans, there was just no game. Well, McKay would not let us go out on the field until Notre Dame took the field. And it finally reached the point where the officials came in our locker room and said, if you're not on the field in 3 minutes, you forfeit the game. McKay turned to the team and said, guys, get dressed, we're going home. I swear to you, you know. So the guys started to take off their uniforms, and this official came back in the locker room and said Notre Dame is going out on the field. And we went out on the field. We hadn't won there in 36 years. I think they were leading 7-0 at half. We beat them 24-7, and you're talking about a highlight. At that time of my life, that was the biggest highlight of my entire life.
Without a doubt, the most traditional rivalry in college football is between Army and Navy. How important is the game? Well, in 1944, when Army capped its undefeated season by beating Navy, General Douglas MacArthur sent this telegram to Army's coach Earl Blake, and we quote, "The greatest of all Army teams, we have stopped the war to celebrate your magnificent success." Ask the Mitty the two most important words in the English language, and he'll say, beat Army.
The only evening before a game that I really literally could not sleep. I was so nervous for that first Army-Navy game, and even playing in 4 Super Bowls, the nervousness wasn't. Army was the name of the game, to beat Army.
The history of college football has seen its share of the unusual and offbeat over the years. One of the most infamous plays occurred at the 1929 Rose Bowl between Georgia Tech and California, when the Golden Bears' Roy Regal picked up a fumble and ran the wrong way with the ball. Fortunately, teammate Benny Lom chased after the confused Regal and pulled him down at the 2-yard line. At the 1954 Cotton Bowl, Rice was thoroughly beating Alabama and was on the way to another score when the Crimson Tide's Tommy Lewis darted off the bench and made a touchdown-saving tackle. As you can see, Lewis tried to hide the fact that he had just been inducted into the College Football Hall of Shame. Without a doubt, the most unusual ending to a game occurred November 20th, 1982, between Stanford and Cal. The Cardinals had just kicked a 35-yard field goal with 4 seconds left to virtually assure them of a 20-19 big game victory.
you know, the odds of something happening with 4 seconds left on the kickoff, especially the kind of kickoff they were attempting to do, which is just a squib kick, the odds weren't that good. I just went straight on the field and lined up in my position, and I noticed that we were missing a guy, so I just moved over, and when he kicked it, it happened to just come right to me.
What happened next defies description.
Along the sideline, another one. They're still in deep trouble at midfield. They tried to do a couple of... The ball is still loose as they get it to Rogers. They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone. He's going into the end zone. Will it count? Everybody's milling around on the field. The Bears! The Bears have won! The Bears have won! Oh my God! The most amazing, sensational, dramatic, heart-rending, exciting, thrilling finish in the history of college football. California has won the big game over Stanford. Oh, excuse me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it. For California through and through.
Over the years, college football has seen some outstanding individual achievements. On a crisp October afternoon in 1924, Red Grange of Illinois scored 24 points in only 12 minutes against Michigan. Amos Alonzo Stagg called it the most spectacular single-handed performance ever delivered in a major game. In 1963, Gale Sayers of Kansas recorded the longest run for a touchdown from scrimmage, 99 yards against Nebraska. Alabama's Leroy Jordan turned in perhaps the greatest single-handed defensive performance at the 1963 Orange Bowl game against Oklahoma. Jordan recorded an amazing 31 tackles in leading the Crimson Tide to victory. Then on Thanksgiving weekend in 1984, Doug Flutie of Boston College threw for 472 yards against Miami, including this last-second game-winning Hail Mary. One of college football's greatest finishes occurred in 1968 between two unbeaten teams, Harvard and Yale. With just over 1 minute to play, Harvard trailed by what seemed to be an insurmountable score of 29-13.
And it is to Bruce Freeman. Touchdown.
But they wouldn't give up. A two-point conversion cut the lead to 8 with 42 seconds to play.
Onside kick. Who's going to get it? Scramble. Loose ball. Harvard. Harvard has it. Back. Gus Krim up the middle. Krim to the 10. Krim to the 6-yard line. And timeout called by Harvard with 14 seconds on the clock. Can they score? Frank Chappie coming up. A hush. He looked. He's got time. He wants to throw. He's still back. Time has run out. He throws. Touchdown! Dick Gatto! Dick Gatto! And the score is 29-27. Chappie. He's got it! He's got it! Tabari! And it ends 29-29. What a finish!
The next day, the headline of the Harvard Crimson read, Harvard beats Yale 29-29. Fayetteville, Arkansas, November 1969. Number 1 Texas against number 2 Arkansas. At stake, the national championship. From the very start, it was all Razorbacks as they jumped out to a 7-0 lead. It seemed Texas could do no right. As Arkansas built its lead to 14-0, a frustrated Texas coach, Darrell Royal, knew the national title was slipping away. But Texas wasn't through yet. On the opening play of the fourth quarter, quarterback James Street broke free of the pesky Arkansas defense and rambled 47 yards for a touchdown. A two-point conversion made the score, Arkansas 14, Texas 8. Then facing fourth down and 2 late in the game, Texas rolled the dice.
We were totally confused all afternoon long with our offense. With time running out, inability to move the ball, I came to the conclusion that we had to get something big and get it in a hurry. And when Peschel goes up for the ball, there were 6 hands up there. 4 of those hands belonged to Arkansas, 2 of them belonged to Texas.
A few plays later, Texas punched it in from the 2, and with the extra point, they lead 15-14. Coach Royal knew, however, that the game wasn't over yet. Arkansas's valiant last-second drive was finally stopped by an interception. The game was over. Texas' incredible comeback won them the national championship. And for all those who played, attended, or watched the game on television, it would go down as one of the greatest games in the history of college football. College football has so many unique and wonderful traditions. The 12th man at Texas A&M, the UCLA card section, a night game at LSU, the Trojan horse, the Boomer Schooner. Yes, there are certain traditions a college football fan has to someday see. Tell us what they are, Bino.
You have to see the dotting of the I at Columbus, Ohio State, Michigan. You have to see it. If you don't see it, you're not a fan. You have to hear the victory march at Notre Dame. It is something to hear the victory march, shake down the thunder, the students, the fans. It's great. You also have to walk through the woods at North Carolina to see a game at Chapel Hill. Think of it, Thomas Wolfe walked through those woods. And also David Brinkley. You can't beat that. And you also have to go to a Florida-Georgia game. Get there Thursday night. See it. It has great atmosphere. And also, before you die, see a game between Lehigh and Lafayette. Go. You will love it. They've played 1,000 times. And they have a great party. See it before you die. And again, if you can't see it this life, see it in the next one.
Over the past hour, we tried to cover as many of the magic moments, legendary coaches and superstar players who have made a mark on college football. Here are a few more that we'd like to honor. One of Fordham's 7 blocks of granite, Vince Lombardi. SMU's Kyle Rote. They called him the King, Washington's Hugh McElhaney. Tennessee's coach, Johnny Majors. Stanford's great quarterbacks, Frankie Albert, John Brody, and John Elway. Illinois' rough, tough linebacker, Dick Butkus. Iowa's tower of power, Alex Karras. The running back tradition of Syracuse, Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Floyd Little, Larry Sonkin. Minnesota's Bronco Nagurski, Leo Namalini, Bobby Bell, and Carl Elliott. UCLA's great coach, Red Sanders. Purdue's quarterbacks, Len Dawson, Bob Greasy, and Mike Phipps. LSU's Billy Cannon and the 1958 Chinese Bandits. Penn State's Franco Harris and Lydell Mitchell. Michigan State's coach, Duffy Doherty, and Charles Bubba Smith. North Carolina's Charlie Choo-Choo Justice. Oregon's Norm Van Brocklin. Southern Cal's legendary coach, Howard Harding Jones, and Frank Gifford. BYU's quarterbacks, Jim McMahon, Steve Young, and Mark Wilson. Oklahoma coach, Barry Switzer, and the awesome Selman brothers, Leroy, Lucius, and Dewey. Maryland's Randy White. Michigan's coach, Fritz Chrysler. Nebraska coaches, Bob Devaney and Tom Osborne. and Notre Dame's Joe Theismann. The history of college football, a game full of tradition, excitement, and wonderful memories. For the history of college football, I'm Curt Gowdy.